Okie dokie. Great to have you here. And hey, everyone. Thanks for listening. This is a webcast where we in general will talk about performance and productivity in new times. But more specifically in this episode, we will touch upon gamification and how to apply that to remote sales teams in order to improve performance and motivation. So I was thinking before we start, we should do a brief presentation of ourselves so that everyone knows who we are. Do you want to start, Adam?
Yeah, sure, I can start. And first of all, I think it's fantastic to be here as well with Remi. We only have a couple of, I think, too little time. We can talk for hours, but yeah, it's good to talk about sales and gamification with you. But my name is Adam. I've been with the company since 2016 and was one of the first employees, and historically have different roles within sales. But now I'm running sales operations here at GetAccept. So I hope to bring two perspectives, both from a sales perspective, but also from a sales ops perspective in terms of tools, processes, and how that can be combined together in a good way.
Yeah.
Cool.
And Remi, who are you?
I'm Remi. I'm the VP of Sales at SalesScreen. I've been here for 6 years, so basically 4 months before we launched the product. Before that, I worked in sales for an additional 7 years. I'm insanely occupied with sales, gamification, and KPIs in general, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation today.
Nice. And shortly about me, I'm the VP Marketing at GetAccept, and in this webcast series, I will try to be the moderator and ask you guys relevant questions. And I've been with GetAccept since November, and before that, I was working within the fintech industry at a company called Bambora. So, but shortly, for those of you who are not familiar about GetAccept and SalesScreen, then GetAccept is a sales enablement and e-signing platform. We were founded in 2015 with the mission to redefine how companies run sales. And SalesScreen is a gamification platform to give teams a tool to inspire better performance and happier workplaces, right? And you guys were founded in 2014.
That's right.
Anything you want to add to that?
I think, like, in general, what we do is we try to keep people motivated, engaged, and inspired. And now more than ever, I think this is immensely important, keeping your reps and managers as well engaged on completing the task that's needed, basically.
Yeah. So let's start with a broad question. I mean, due to the current situation, we are not the only companies that are working remotely. And I would say that, I mean, this question or topic has probably been debated a lot lately, but just to get your perspectives on the remote situations, can you tell me a little bit about how you are handling your teams and how you are working remotely, and how do you keep the motivation and engagement up in these times? Do you want to start, Remi?
Yeah, sure, I can. I think it's been a challenging period, not only for reps, but also for managers. I think we need to emphasize that. It's difficult because you have to basically do a 180 and refine the way you communicate, which I think is the most important thing. If we're going to go down to specifics, I want to say talk more, and not necessarily about business, but just talk more, because you don't know the situation of your colleagues. Are they alone? Do they have a family? Are the kids in the house? There's a lot of different situations out there. And what we've done specifically is, first off, we have a weekly sales meeting, usually. Once a week, we meet and we talk business. Now we have every morning at 9 a.m., we have what we call a sales wake-up call, where we get together, we put on the camera, and we just talk to each other. And that's about everything, like meetings going on today, opportunities that we're hoping to close, what's going on in the world, like how's life at home, and just getting that, being able to conversate with each other. I think that's very important right now.
Yeah, we do the same. Do you follow up on that during the day, or like one-to-one, or do you have like a sum-up meeting at the end of the day as well, or?
We have a lot of one-to-ones. I've always had that since our team is very spread out. We have teams in Sweden, Norway, Netherlands, Singapore, and the US. We've used Zoom and video communication a lot, but more now than ever, I think these one-to-ones where you just a check-in. And we keep our weekly sales meeting as well, which is more the formal thing, but more informal talks. And with that, I feel like personally, I have a way better pulse of the company. What's actually going on down to each rep and each opportunity that we're working on. I know it way more now because we're forced to conversate.
So you become much more involved in the details, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the reps love it. I've got feedback from them saying that, like, you're really here right now because I have to be. I can't hide behind every meeting that I am a part of or what's going on in the Oslo office where I'm usually at. Now everybody's remote. And I think that's actually helped a lot in our organization with regards to culture as well.
So communication is your top tip.
That's my top tip. Secondly, I think like what we've spent the past 48 days on is training. Really utilizing this time to revamp our communication and our training with regards to how we work as a company, how each individual should do every part of the sales job. If it's prospecting, completing these demos, following up, and really working on the customer journey, making sure that we help customers and pinpointing all our activities to the right customers that we can help right now.
Adam, what's your perspective on the same question? How do you keep your team motivated and engaged?
Yes, we have been working remote now for 7 or 8 weeks, something like that. So it's been an interesting time, to say at least. But I think that we have had an advantage of being quite remote from the start, so it wasn't that big of a transition from our perspective. But I totally agree with what Remi says as well, that the communication and the check-ins are super important. You can't have those small coffee talks in the office, look at the person, see how they are feeling. Are they feeling well? Are they bad? What's happening on their private life? I mean, those kind of stuff are getting more important now than ever, especially when we're in this weird situation that we are at the moment. So we have structured our week where we have a Monday meeting with sales and in general the whole company. Every Tuesday and Thursday we have an EU checkup for Europe, half an hour in the end of the day, just to check in on numbers, checking how people are feeling. What are the we have an open mic session. If anyone would like to share something, feel free to do that. But also what is working well and what we need to work more on. And then on Wednesdays and on Fridays, we have the team stand-ups and check-ins at 8 every morning, just to get going, get the good start, and then continue from there. And what we tried really hard to do is to have a great visibility and transparency, like what is happening in the company, what are our metrics right now, what is working, what is not working, what's our expectations as a company and on each and every individual. And I think that we have been repeating the company vision now more than we have ever done, I think. Like, where do we want to be? What's our mission with the company? Why are we here? Because at least for myself, I mean, I start to question the motivation goes down when you work from home after a while. So just getting that feedback and repeat the vision all the time, I think that's good for internal motivation.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I can see just from my own team that having more frequent meetings in the morning, just to sort of say good morning and hi and how's everybody doing, but also touch upon much more in details, just as you were pointing out, Remi. What is everybody working on, and I feel as a leader of the team that I am much more task oriented and involved in details, but that's on a positive side, and I also feel like the feedback I've been receiving from the team is that they also value that a lot, that I'm much more involved in their everyday work.
Maybe you spread the time a bit different now. Maybe you because you're located in Stockholm, Frida, so maybe now you're spending a bit more time with the people in Malmö, or
exactly.
you're
But I think that's also something that we have to learn when getting out from this, that how do we keep like a new version of all of this to find the balance, like not just going back to how we used to run teams, but actually trying to pick the best parts from this period and make a good mix, a new mix out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think every team that really is digital and has utilized the possibilities that Zoom and Slack and every other communication platform gives in times like these, they're going to come out strengthened as a team. Yeah, and if I want to summarize this whole thing, I think team is the key word. And team now isn't necessarily the people that's in your team. It's everybody, and you work more as a company. Times like these make you understand the value of your company and where you're headed to, and the alignment we receive based on everything that we're doing. People are just focused. And when I went out, I wrote like an internal letter to the company about this. When we went out of the office on the 12th of March, where everything shut down in Norway, I was so scared, basically. How is this going to affect us? And I just spoke with a customer, and they told me like 2 months ago, I would say that we can never work remote. And now she told me like, we want to work remote. This works for us. And I think that's in any industry. You don't have to be a software company, but you really see the potential in each individual and what they're actually capable and able to do if you give them trust. And that's mind-blowing in my eyes. So I'm super happy with.
We will, coming out of this, maybe this is a leading question, but do you think that we will work much more remote going forward, even though we don't have to in that sense?
Like personally, I hope not, because I love my colleagues and I want to spend time with them as much as possible. But I think the difference is we know now as management teams, as individuals, that we're able to be productive even when we're not at the office. So the level of trust has increased. So if somebody tells me that I need to work from home now for a couple of days because I have some things I need to fix, sure, no problem. Before I might have to but please try to come into the office. I want to have you here. But now we've connected on a different level. I think that's great.
And I can also see what I've learned from my team members is that some people are so much more focused and productive when they actually sit at home. And they have also, many of them have also realized themselves that, hey, I get so much out of the day and I produce so much and I feel so happy, when the day is over, that I've actually finished the stuff that I needed to finish. And that tells me that when we move out from this situation, that some people might need to actually think about that a perfect combination for them is actually to be at home or somewhere else 1, 2, 3 days a week, and not necessarily feeling that they need to get into the office, because then they're distracted with a million other things, and that gives stress and everything. So I think you're learning the best way for yourself to work as well during this situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyhow, let's talk a bit about gamification. A hot trend, I would say, that people are talking more and more about, and more companies are implementing it. And I think, Remi, you're probably the expert here. So could you just briefly start to tell us, like, what is gamification? What are the most common functions of gamification, and what kind of companies benefit from implementing gamification?
For sure, and I hope I'm expert. I should be. Like in short, gamification is applying game elements to work-related tasks. And I think that the first and biggest fear that people think about when they hear the word gamification is they visualize like an Xbox controller. And that's the view of gamification, but gamification is not necessarily something new. Like, I play cards, and my grandparents play cards, and we play chess and Ludo or whatever. It's about bringing the elements from games in general that makes it fun, that makes us want to compete and really enjoy it. So in short, gamification is about, first off, we need, in a sales environment, we need data. So we need to get data from somewhere. So basically from your CRM or your call system or whatever you use. And we pull all this data, and then we gamify the data. So we say, for example, we can create badges, for example. So for every 5 meetings you book in a week, you get this badge. And this badge gives you a recognition. People can see it. It pops up in a feed so everybody can celebrate together. But it also could give you coins, for example. And coins could be converted in your reward shop, where you can shop different stuff. You have competitions, which is a very important part of it, of course, and especially in a sales team, where you can compete on any given metric at any time in a variety of ways, basically just defining focus and giving incentives back to the reps and giving them a reason to engage.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, especially now working from home, my biggest enemy at the moment is Slack and my email, because that's going to steal my focus. Like any email
it's not
coming
your washing
in.
machine.
No, for me it's not. But like I get a lot of Slack messages, I get a lot of emails. Yeah. But when I have these competitions or battles, or I know what I need to focus on, and I know what I'm gonna get the pat on the back on. And I think like for salespeople in general, there's 2 things that are important. This is very generic, but basically it's money in the pocket, and I want pat on the back, and I need that pat on the back all the time. But it's difficult for managers, especially, to see all the reps all the time. So what we basically provide in SalesScreen is a way for managers to really give that digital pat on the back, catch people red-handed in doing a great job instantly, not summarizing it once a week or once a month, but it's just great job. Keep on.
Would you say gamification in this sense, is it only for sales organizations, or could other teams, or?
As long as you have metrics, as long as you have something to measure, you can't do gamification on air. So you have to have something concrete that you're working towards. As long as you have goals, you can gamify those goals and the way towards that goal. But what we need to gamify more is everything that happens before the deal is closed. We need to gamify those activities that in the end creates deals, and that the things that each individual can affect themselves. Because if I'm running a competition on sales, there's another party there that has to agree and sign off while picking up the phone or sending an email or connecting on LinkedIn. That's something everybody can do.
I mean, marketing teams, in my mind, could definitely benefit from gamification as well.
Absolutely.
And I think usually when you talk about gamification, it's about, of course, competitions, but also getting rewards, which is a lot of the external motivation. So what's your experience and best practices on combining internal motivation and using gamification to enhance that? Do you have any tips on how you can do that?
Great question. I think like in general, it's all about internal motivation is something that comes from the individual. That's personal. And creating internal motivation is not something a manager can do. Now you're internally motivated. This has to come through mastery. So when I master stuff, when I really just, I understand this now, and I've learned and I've developed and I've created my magical formula, I'm internally motivated to do that even more because I understand it. And to create that mastery, you have to train. Basically, so if I want to become great at pitching or great at booking meetings or great at closing deals, I have to do it a lot of times. So when you repeat, and you can use gamification to help them do the training, basically, and emphasize on the training.
Incentivize training, more or less.
Exactly. So when you train a lot, you become, great at it. And then you have the extrinsic motivation first. I've mastered it. I get my recognition, my coins, my accolades and everything. And when I've done that enough times, this becomes internal motivation. That's my personal view.
A question to you. I know that we have just, or quite recently implemented gamification at GetAccept in our sales force. Can you say or tell that there's a difference in terms of the motivation and everything in the teams before gamification and after gamification? Is there like a clear pattern there?
I would say it's a lot about transparency, and we are and have been since the start a very transparent company, but it has been hard to showcase those numbers in a good way. But I would say definitely that once we actually launched SalesScreen, that our internal motivation and external, but also the motivation in general, increased from the reps, because you make something that could be, to be honest, quite boring, making calls, to a fun stuff by having competitions, by recognizing while someone is booking a meeting where they can have a video. Just having the video is brings so much joy to the daily work, and then you can laugh about that, and you create a fun element towards your daily life and work, and towards tasks that could be quite repetitive, and in some cases boring. I would definitely say that both the motivation but also the activity has increased in general.
Yeah. So what would you say, I mean, in terms of KPIs, or if you were to give your favorite games or competitions, and that obviously comes from what KPIs you want to measure, what would you say, Remi, is your best tips on competitions or KPIs to measure?
I think my number one tips, and this is something I've tried to develop for the past 6 years, but number one, start on the base KPIs, like not your deals won, but everything that happens before you close the deal, every conversation, email, LinkedIn, email you sent, meeting you booked, proposal you sent, every time you move the customer from one stage to another in the pipeline. That's the most important things, because that's what we can influence 100% on our own. And that's what we need to focus on. That's number one. What was your second part of the question? I forgot.
Like your favorite competition.
Yeah, good point. As I've been running thousands of competitions over the past 13 years, I think the number one problem with sales competitions, and this is a global issue, is that the law of Pareto is everywhere. 20% of your employees is going to be representative for 80% of your revenue, or something like that at least. And in competitions, it's exactly the same. So if you create a competition with 50 people, 40 of them, they're going to know that I'm not going to win this competition. If you're competing on who closes the most deals, or who completes the most calls, or books the most meetings, because there's always a favorite. It's like a horse race, right? There's a favorite that has the lowest odds. Yeah. So my number one tip.
How do you get around that?
My number one tip is to, we have a competition type called the lottery competition. So for every activity you do, you get a ticket. So every call you complete or every marketing message you send, you get a ticket. And in the end of the competition period, a manager goes in and he or she spins the wheel. And it picks a random winner. So the most tickets, the highest probability of winning. But as long as you've contributed, you can actually win. And that makes those middle 60% performers, which is most of our employees, those who are not always on the top, they want to be a part of it because they know this time I actually can win. And when you can lift those people and make them intrinsically motivated, then you're creating results. So that's my number one tip. Do not compete and do not compete for your 20% performing reps. They're going to be there forever, and they're going to always perform.
They're going to achieve or perform anyway.
Yeah.
Adam, do you have a favorite competition?
I mean, it depends on what you would like to focus on for that specific moment and time. So I think it varies. I mean, we run daily competitions, we run weekly, we run monthly, we have yearly. So I think it depends on what KPIs you would like to measure and what's the outcome that you would like to generate. But exactly as Remi said, what we focus on, and especially now during COVID-19 and remote work, is all of the leading indicators that is generating sales. So the number of calls, the deals created, which is actually an outcome of the calls in many cases, all of the contact works, everything that we do prior to the sale. How can we make sure to increase that and keep that on a higher level, which will then most likely generate more sales as well. So we focus more on that stuff rather than closed ARR or closed deals. Yeah.
That's going to come. That's going to come in the end if you do the right thing. And one last tip, and again, as I said previously, the one thing I've learned throughout this COVID situation and work from home is team up, and in competitions as well. I just looked at some data when I looked at competitions individual versus individual compared to competitions team versus team. The end result, it's the double when you compete on teams, because then you get people to push each other. And you're helping each other get on the way, and you don't want to perform. You can perform badly for yourself, but you don't want to make other people look weak, basically. So you're pushing each other, and you're making that cultural thing up again. You're doing something together, and that's important now.
We have actually implemented but this is not in SalesScreen. It's just in a slide. But we have implemented bingo, which is like you have different bingo scorecards, and then once you create a full row, then you win a prize, and you work as a team. So we have Team Stockholm, Team Malmö, Team Norway, and then once you have completed scorecards, then you post a message in Slack with now you can't take a picture of full team, but just something that brings joy. So I think that's something that has been quite fun, at least.
Everyone loves the bingo board.
Yeah, that's cool. We should create that in SalesScreen for sure.
That's what I thought. You should have a bingo board.
I'll let the developers know. I'll send them this recording.
That's the tip of the day from us.
yeah, thanks.
Exactly.
But this is how we've developed our software as well. It's based on the feedback from our customers, because we don't know everything about sales, but the sum of our customers do. So we need to act on the requests we have. So send it to us.
Will do. Well, guys, we need to wrap this up. Thanks for chatting. It's been interesting, and I've learned a lot about gamification that I didn't know before. And thanks to everyone who's been listening. We're going to sum up the best tips of this webcast and post it on our landing page. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to either me or Adam or Remi. We would be happy to answer any questions. It's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
It is.